The first step towards liberating ourselves is to gain a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of our plight and condition. Because if our understandings are flawed, then all liberating remedies that stem from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. If this was not true, white oppressive forces would not have spread so much false information into our community. They did it to prevent us from gaining the accurate understanding of our plight that's required in order to develop the proper counter strategies that are necessary to liberate ourselves. The solution to all problems begins with gaining an accurate understanding of a problem. When people know better, they do better. This is an inherent fact within the human condition. This is why those who know the truth must teach. African proverb. The truth of our plight has nothing to do with the Bible, because a Bible that strongly condones slavery, written by history's proven most ungodliest group of people, and that was brutally beaten into the blood-soaked minds of our ancestors by their ungodly enslavers that also raped, maimed, and murdered them, is inherently disqualified from containing the true words of God. Come on, ask yourself. That's not the way an infallible God would introduce his words to a people. And the truth of our condition has nothing to do with a silly slave syndrome myth. The Willie Lynch myth was actually written in 1970 by Dr. Kwabena Ashanti. He wrote those symptoms based upon behaviors that he himself personally observed amongst our people during contemporary times. This is why it appears so accurate. This is also why when experts examined the letter, they found it contained modern words that were inconsistent with its given 1700 date, thus proving that it's fraudulent literature. Moreover, the slave syndrome myth presents what would be the least effective method used for controlling generations of people. True brainwashing requires a system that's being constantly reapplied and reinforced upon a targeted population in order to remain effective. If not, its brainwashing effects would lessen with each new generation and not worsen as we're witnessing among us. The truth of our plight and condition is that presently there are white government agents that specializes in psychiatry and propaganda that analyze and studies everything about the black population. Our beliefs, our likes, our dislikes, our strengths, our vulnerability. This surveillance information is gathered and then decisions are made on which fraudulent stories to produce to best create certain psychological feelings amongst the black population that assist the white society in maintaining its control and dominance over black people. That's the truth of our plight. They keep us believing the fraudulent worst narratives about ourselves to demoralize us, divide us, make us self-loathing, and to keep our collective aggression shifted away from the white society and redirected against ourselves. It's how they now prevent us from unifying ourselves against the white society. This is all possible because people are like computers. All you have to do is keep giving people certain information every so often, and you can persuade an entire generation towards an implied objective. Most people will respond the same way because they've been fed the same disinformation. Moreover, because these white propagandists write all of our narratives and controls our mainstream media images, they also negligently distort them in many other ways that serve the system of white supremacy. They vilify us to falsely validate the white society's mistreatment of us. They dehumanize us to make others insensitive to our plight. They falsely marginalize us to create the false empowering perception of white racial superiority over black people. These fraudulent propaganda campaigns create and sustain false assumptions and societal norms in society that aids in maintaining white social dominance over black people. This elaborate propaganda campaign was implemented in response to the unprecedented unified black protests of the 1960s. It was formulated based upon the findings of the 1968 Current Commission report's suggestions for how to handle the U.S. Negro problem. Although we no longer face the type of white racism that our ancestors, our grandparents face, we still face white racism. When the blatant white racism used in the past became no longer socially acceptable with changing time, had ran their course because they resulted in also an unprecedented unified black protest, the white society did not stop its subjugation tactics against black people. They merely developed covert methods that are not as easily recognized by the black victims. White racism prevails best when the black victims no longer recognizes it. They have us under a sophisticated system that they continue to subjugate us without black resistance because they've manipulated us to perceive ourselves as being our own worst enemies. Those black people who insist that we are our own worst enemies does so because they've been brainwashed to believe it. If you think you've confirmed those beliefs based upon your own experiences, you are delusional, because it's not humanly possible to accurately assess the collective state of millions of people based upon your own experiences. You believe those negative things about our race because the white society controls our narrative, controls our statistics, they control our interpretation of ourselves. And they keep us believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves to keep us from unifying against them. We have to elevate our minds. We have to realize that we are under the oppression of a very narcissistic, diabolical people. And they are using their position of power, their monopoly over information, as a warfare against us. Information warfare. See, most people haven't heard of information warfare, doesn't understand how the white society feeds us information to shape our minds in ways that serves and protect the system of white supremacy. Those of us who are telling you the truth, are trying to free your mind from a mental prison you don't even know you're trapped within. One love and peace.